You're sitting on a plane. The seatbelt sign is off. Someone 2 rows ahead is opening a packet of crisps. The cabin crew are halfway down the aisle with the drinks trolley. Outside the window, everything looks calm. Then suddenly, the plane drops. Your stomach lifts. The wings flex. The overhead bins rattle. Someone gasps. Someone laughs nervously. Someone grips the armrest like it's the only thing keeping the aircraft in the sky. And for a few seconds, every logical thought disappears and one question takes over. Can turbulence actually bring this plane down? It feels like the answer should be yes, because from inside the cabin, turbulence doesn't feel like air. It feels like the plane has hit something, or fallen into something, or lost control just for a moment. But here's what's fascinating. The thing that feels most dangerous about flying is usually not dangerous to the plane. It is dangerous to something much smaller. You. Not because the aircraft is fragile, but because your body is loose inside it. So to understand how safe turbulence really is, we have to separate 2 very different questions. Can turbulence break a modern airliner? And can turbulence hurt the people inside? Those sound like the same question. They are not. Let's start with what turbulence actually is. Most people imagine the sky as an empty space, a smooth, invisible road that planes glide through. But the atmosphere is not empty. It is constantly moving, folding, rising, sinking, shearing, and colliding with itself. A plane is not flying through nothing. It is flying through a moving ocean of air. And just like the ocean has waves, currents, and sudden rough patches, the atmosphere has disturbed areas where air moves unevenly. That is turbulence. Sometimes it comes from storms. Air inside and around thunderstorms can rise and fall violently. Sometimes it comes from mountains, where wind flows over terrain and creates waves on the other side. Sometimes it comes from jet streams, where fast-moving rivers of air meet slower air around them. And sometimes it comes from clear air turbulence. That is the type passengers often find most unnerving, because there may be no obvious cloud, no storm, and no warning from the window. The sky can look perfectly calm while the aircraft suddenly starts shaking. But the aircraft is not falling out of the sky. It is moving through disturbed air. Think of driving a car over a rough road. The car shakes, the suspension moves, your body jolts in the seat. But the car has not stopped being a car. It has not forgotten how roads work. It is just passing over uneven ground. Turbulence is the sky's version of uneven ground, except there is one big difference. In a car, the road is solid. In a plane, the road is air, and the aircraft is designed from the beginning to handle movement in that air. This is where the fear and the reality start to split apart. Because from a passenger seat, turbulence feels like chaos. From an engineering point of view, it is part of the job description. Commercial aircraft are built with huge safety margins. The wings are not rigid metal planks. They are designed to flex. When you look out and see a wing bouncing, that can feel terrifying, but flexing is exactly what it is supposed to do. A wing that flexes is absorbing load. A wing that never moved would be far more worrying. This is why videos of wing stress tests look so strange. Engineers bend wings upward to extremes that passengers will never normally see in flight. They do not do that because they expect your flight to experience those conditions. They do it because aircraft certification requires a structure to handle forces beyond normal operation. So when you feel the plane bumping around, it can feel like the aircraft is being pushed to its limit. In normal turbulence, it is not. The pilots are uncomfortable. The passengers are uncomfortable. The crew may need to sit down. Drinks may spill. But the aircraft itself is usually nowhere near the edge of what it can structurally withstand. That does not mean pilots ignore turbulence. They absolutely do not. Pilots look at weather radar, forecasts, reports from other aircraft, air traffic control information, and onboard systems. They change altitude or route where it makes sense. They slow to an appropriate turbulence penetration speed when needed. They turn the seatbelt sign on. They ask cabin crew to secure the cabin. But they are not usually doing this because they think the plane is about to break. They are doing it because turbulence is uncomfortable, inefficient, and most importantly, risky for people who are not restrained. And this is the key idea of the whole video. Turbulence almost never threatens the plane. It threatens the cabin. Inside the cabin, everything changes. Because the plane may be firmly under control, but you are not physically attached to it unless your seatbelt is fastened. If the aircraft suddenly moves down and your body keeps moving upward, you can hit the armrest, the seat in front, the ceiling, another passenger, or a service trolley. This is where serious injuries happen. Not because the aircraft dropped thousands of feet in the way people imagine. Not because the pilots lost control. Not because the wings were about to snap. But because bodies and objects inside the cabin kept moving when the aircraft moved. This is why cabin crew are especially vulnerable. Passengers often sit for most of the flight. Cabin crew are standing, walking, serving food, lifting objects, securing carts, checking passengers, and moving through the aisle. If unexpected turbulence hits during service, they may have nothing restraining them. The FAA's own data shows this clearly. From 2009 to 2024, there were 207 serious turbulence injuries on US Part 121 operations. Only 40 involved passengers, 166 involved crew. That number matters because it changes how you understand the risk. Turbulence is not mainly a story about planes falling apart. It is a workplace hazard for cabin crew and a seatbelt hazard for passengers. This is why the most boring safety advice is also the most important. Keep your seatbelt fastened whenever you are seated. Not tight like you are bracing for impact, just fasten low across your hips with enough comfort that you can sit normally. Because the dangerous turbulence is not always the dramatic kind you see coming. Sometimes the aircraft enters a rough patch before the crew have time to warn everyone. Sometimes the seatbelt sign comes on seconds before the first jolt. Sometimes the pilots know there might be light turbulence, but the exact moment and strength are still uncertain. Weather forecasting is good, pilot experience is good, aircraft systems are good, but the atmosphere is still the atmosphere. It does not send calendar invites. This is why the seatbelt sign is not the whole story. Passengers often treat the seatbelt sign like permission. Sign off means safe, sign on means unsafe. But really, it is more like a warning level. When the sign is on, you definitely need to be strapped in. When it is off, the airline may still recommend keeping your belt fastened while seated because unexpected turbulence can still happen. The goal is not to trap you in your seat. It is to stop your head hitting the ceiling. And that leads to one of the biggest misunderstandings in aviation. People often say, the plane dropped. Sometimes it did descend, but in turbulence, the sensation of dropping can be much more dramatic than the aircraft's actual altitude change. Your inner ear is extremely sensitive to vertical acceleration. A sudden downward movement can feel like a massive fall, even when the aircraft has only moved a relatively small amount. It is the same reason a lift can make your stomach feel strange without actually traveling very far. A plane can also rise and sink within moving air while still maintaining its overall flight path. The altitude might fluctuate, the autopilot may adjust, the pilots may intervene, but this does not mean the aircraft is tumbling out of control. From the passenger seat, you feel every jolt as a threat. From the cockpit, turbulence is often a workload problem. Annoying, seems severe, sometimes worth avoiding urgently, but not the same thing as a crash. So why does it scare us so much? Partly because turbulence removes the illusion of stillness. Most of the time, modern flying feels unreal. You are traveling at hundreds of miles per hour at cruising altitude in a pressurized tube, and somehow it feels calmer than a train. You can watch a film, drink coffee, fall asleep, forget that outside the window the air is too thin and cold for human survival. Turbulence breaks that illusion. Suddenly, you are reminded that you are not in a building, you are in the sky. And your brain does not like that. Humans evolved to understand danger on the ground. We understand slipping, falling, fire, water, animals, cliffs. We did not evolve with a natural instinct for what a flexing aircraft wing means at 35,000 feet. So our brains fill the gap with fear. The cabin shakes and the brain says something is wrong. But aviation is full of things that feel wrong while being normal. The landing gear thumps after takeoff. The engines change sound during climb. The flaps move. The wings bend. The plane banks. The nose lowers during descent. The cabin makes strange noises. And turbulence makes the whole aircraft feel alive. To a nervous passenger, these can feel like warning signs. To the aircraft, they are routine. Now, there is one honest caveat. Severe turbulence is real. Extreme turbulence is real, though very rare in commercial aviation. There have been serious turbulence incidents. People have been injured. Flights have diverted. In rare cases, there have been deaths, often involving a combination of sudden motion, people not being restrained, or underlying medical factors. So the right answer is not turbulence is completely harmless. That would be too simple. The better answer is this. Turbulence is usually safe for the aircraft, but it can be unsafe for unrestrained people inside the aircraft. That distinction is the entire story. Because when passengers ask, is turbulence safe? They often mean, is the plane going to crash? The answer for normal commercial flying is overwhelmingly no. Modern airliners are designed, tested, maintained, and operated with turbulence in mind. Pilots train for it. Dispatchers plan around it. Controllers share reports. Airlines invest in turbulence data. Aircrafts are not delicate objects being surprised by the sky. But the question is, can turbulence injure me? The answer is yes. Especially if you are standing, walking, in the toilet, holding a hot drink, reaching into the overhead bin, or sitting with your seatbelt undone. And this is why turbulence is such a strange aviation risk. The emotional fear is aimed at the plane. The practical risk is aimed at the passenger. So what should you actually do? First, keep your seatbelt fastened whenever seated. That single habit removes much of the personal risk. Second, do not rush to the toilet when the seatbelt sign comes on. If the crew turn it on, they are not doing it for decoration. Third, be careful with hot drinks during bumpy periods. Burns are one of those boring risks that nobody imagines when they think about turbulence, but they are far more realistic than the wing falling off. Fourth, listen to the cabin crew. If they stop service and sit down, that is not theatre. It means the flight deck wants the cabin secured. And finally, remember what turbulence is. It is not the plane failing. It is the air moving. The aircraft is not driving on a perfectly smooth road. It is crossing an invisible ocean, and sometimes that ocean gets rough. But here's what's fascinating. The more you understand turbulence, the less mysterious it becomes. The shaking is not proof that flying is unsafe. In a way, it proves the opposite. The wings flex because they are designed to flex. The pilots slow down because they know the correct procedure. The seatbelt sign comes on because airlines understand the real risk. The aircraft keeps flying because it was built for an atmosphere that does not always behave. So the next time your plane starts bumping around, your brain may still react first. That is normal. Your stomach may drop. Your hands may still grip the armrest. You may still glance out at the wing and wonder how something that big can move that much. But now you know what you are actually seeing. Not a plane on the edge. Not a disaster beginning. Not the sky opening underneath you. You are seeing an aircraft doing exactly what it was designed to do. Move through imperfect air while keeping hundreds of people safely inside. And the safest thing you can do is not panic, not analyze every sound, and not stare at the wing waiting for it to stop flexing. It is much simpler than that. Sit down, buckle up, and let the plane do its job.